Again, I want to articulate that it's nuanced depending upon the school and the district you're in and how it actually takes place. But these 4 things were the key things that connected what was happening in those higher performing schools and distinguished them from the average performing school. So they're kind of like, I guess, a 4-legged stool. These 4 things show the integrity of the building and the district around what they're doing with graduating as many at-risk kids as possible on time, hopefully within 4 years. So let's move on to the second one. So the next one, and you would want to turn your page, okay? The next one we're going to talk about here is this bridging divides piece. Oftentimes really challenging at the high school level. You know, how do you connect with kids, and how do you connect kids and families with people in school buildings? And what we found in the higher performing schools that distinguished them from the average performing schools was about the collaborating with colleagues, this constant communication, very strong communication networks, conduits for communication happening in the building, and that leads to a lot of other good things about making the interventions, that whole child intervention loop that was directly connected is keeping that communication flow going. And then developing those school and community relations, really leveraging what is available in the community for kids, everything from doing internships out in the community, and we have a few other examples in the case studies of that. And linking the social and academic supports for the students who really need them. So it's about identification and then making sure that the supports were in place in a timely manner, so for the kids before you lose them. So some of the quotes that we have here from Elmont and Eastridge. So an Elmont guidance personnel talks about find out what the barriers are. Is it financial, living arrangements, the social workers? And counselors work closely with kids and families and teachers to find out what the barrier is. Do you need to be evaluated for special education? Never were. Are there vision issues? So really looking holistically at a child. What is happening here? What could potentially be negatively affecting this student's engagement in school and success in school? The Eastridge teacher is saying all success has to come from establishing a relationship with your students, creating a culture of support. I think students, even in the roughest times, have at least a handful of adults that they can go to. Their safety, both physical and emotional. And what we found in these schools is there was a really distinct and very concerted effort to connect adults to children. That connection of adults to children, even if it's one adult in a building who makes that strong connection to an adolescent. So one of the example schools was Brookfield, and you can see their graduation rates over time compared to New York State in the teal. And this is a really small school, 77 students. Anybody come from a school district with a smaller number of students in the high school? What about Northville? What does Northville have these days?
170.
Okay, that's not bad. I'm a Northville grad, by the way, so I'm not sure. I think the population has actually dropped since I went through. This was a socioeconomically diverse school, so they had some richer and some poorer mixed in, P12 building. And, you know, really a fundamental focus in this building was about teaching kids to think, that critical thinking, higher order thinking, real focus on that, and I'll talk about that in a minute too. Okay, so again, I'd like you to take a look at that packet that you have here, and on the top slide you see the bridging divides, and you'll see that continuum again. So if you are more like this end, you would circle or write down 1 or 2. Okay, a lot like is 1, 2, somewhat like, and then on the other side, somewhat like, 3, and 4, a lot like. Just consider those 4 things right now and take a couple of notes. What do you think about the building that you work in, or the district that you work in? go more towards the 4 end. How about 3, 2, 1. Okay, this one looks across the group anyway, a little bit on the lower end, that this might be more of a challenge. So again, all of the details that are in the case studies I don't have in my head as of today, but they are in those case studies. They're really interesting examples, and so some of these that I'm pulling out right now, you might want to highlight Brookfield as one of the places you might want to look at. And then also for the more urban or suburban people in the room right now, you might want to look at Elmont and East Ridge case studies for examples of how they bridge these divides within their building and also with the community members. Okay, so the next finding that we found was the crafting engaging instruction. This is really at the core of what was happening in these buildings to support graduation. And so they were designing instruction that was promoting higher order thinking, like I just said. They were using evidence-informed and technology-enhanced instruction, and they were using strategies for active and broad participation among the students. So they were differentiating, being very inclusive of all the students in the room, and they were offering experiential opportunities. And so you see a quote here from the principal of Brookfield. A good teacher is someone whose students are engaged, involved in the learning activities, thinking, responding, challenging themselves. It's the engagement of students in the learning activities that marks the good teacher. So easier said than done, right? But the examples that we see here are that this becomes pervasive once you build an understanding and a vision for what it looks like to offer engaging instruction in your building, right? And so setting up teacher leaders who offer that up either as coaches or just as teacher leaders in particular teams that can relay this information out and model it for other teachers. What we have here are a few quotes. In Amityville, the priority is keeping current with the types of instructional strategies that will engage the students that we have. It's crazy how much technology I'm using in the classroom today. I was wondering, by the way, in each one of your buildings, would you say that you use a lot of technology in instruction? Anybody, a lot of technology instruction? Okay, not so much? How about technology in the hands of the students themselves? Yeah, I've got a few nods out there. Yeah. I just finished another study, the National Study of Writing Instruction, where we looked specifically at the development of academic writing in secondary school. And it was really interesting to find the higher performing schools around the country. That was a national study. We're really engaging kids on hands-on use of technology in composing, right? And that's another thing we know from the Common Core, that academic writing is, that we have increased emphasis on doing that and doing it well, and that's a good bridge to college work. And actually, it's one of the most important bridges to college work, is being able to write, and write in different genres for different academic subject areas, right? So we know that this technology-enhanced instruction really works well. So let me see here. One of the examples that we have in our data set was the East Ridge High School. This is a more urban district. And that quote down there on the bottom, I'm not going to tell a student you can't try something that we advertise as a more rigorous program. It's never too late to change your approach to scholarship. And this is an interesting finding we also noticed in the previous high school study, not necessarily looking at high school graduation, but just looking at high school performance, is that the offering of the more rigorous classes to students as they enter into high school had a good effect on their trajectory through high school. Okay, so not pushing the students who may not be the highest flyer into more of the remedial types of classes, but really pushing those students to think of themselves as people who can engage in really high-level academics as they proceed through high school. And we have a lot of examples of that intervention actually happening down into the middle school for the students who are potentially at risk of making those interventions and having young scholars programs and things like that for those kinds of students. So again, if you can take a look at your sheet, the middle one is the one you would be focusing on now. And on the continuum, if you can take a look at each one of those, where do you think your school or district lies on that continuum? Okay? So people on the level of, or on the continuum toward 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you're starting to get a sense of your topography, where you might have areas that could use some support and some ideas, generating some new ideas. So the last one that I'd like to talk about is this driving the whole child intervention loop, and this is directly connected to the use of evidence data. So we have here the Eastridge School Administrator saying that the spreadsheet we use is a living document on every student junior to senior year. How many credits they need, the exams they still need, PSAT and SAT scores. Actually, they mandate that the students take those. That's definitely the lifeline. We have weekly meetings every Wednesday with Ed Services and the assistant principal, who's the head of the alternative program. We talk about students we're worried about. We compare notes, test scores, and updates. There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of data that's involved here, but they're tracking it very carefully. And I think this is the spreadsheet that actually was on the website when I was showing you in the framework, those documents that are downloadable, so you can take a look at how they shape that out. Okay, so a few more quotes on this particular aspect. We do meet every Wednesday morning to talk about any student where we have concerns, what's being done for this kid, do we recognize the issue? Somebody steps up and helps to formulate strategies to make this successful. It's not a written plan for every kid. We do have educational contracts for kids that lay out progressive steps in discipline or academics. This is where you need to be when. Okay, so there's tracking. There's a lot of communication happening around these students. There are instruments that they use to track these students. And this last one here is important. The idea is early detection, right? Instead of losing them along the way. So Amityville is one of the exemplar schools in our study on this one. So you're interested in this particular aspect of the practices, you might want to take a look at that case study. And you can see here the graduation by subgroups. By the way, this display here, you can create this on our Find Your Schools link, the one that I was showing that shows scatter plots and opportunity gaps and so on. You can look at performance of different subgroups of students and over time and with comparison sets of schools if you'd like to do that. So it's a handy way to just pull the data out.
Their own schools?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. You can do this on our website. So you can go in, find your school, and then you can select comparison schools. You can select, New York State, right? And you can create some of these graphics.
You have a nice picture of our school too, like that.
We don't. We don't have pretty pictures of your schools up there. Sorry about that. No. Okay. So this last one, again, if you can read through these on the left, these on the right, where do you fit on the continuum? And rank yourself. Okay. How about those on the end of 4, 3, 2, and 1? Okay, most people you rank yourself somewhere around 2 or 3. There's opportunities for you to grab some ideas from our resources, so I want to shift in that direction right now. I'm going to stop talking for a little bit, and I do want to give you one example of a case study for you to take a look at. Now, keep in mind that I don't have case studies for all of the different findings. This one is about the crafting engaging instruction. Did that sound of interest? I was hoping that would be something interesting to most people. I don't have enough copies for everybody, so you may need to scoot up next to somebody else. But what I'd like you to do is take a look at this case study and think about how you rank yourself on that crafting engaging instruction piece. and see what kinds of ideas you might be able to pull out of this case study. I'd like to give you a little bit of time to discuss it, right? And so I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to peruse this, skim it through, and see what ideas that you pull out. And then I'd like to hear and share out some of those ideas that you'd like to pull out of here. So